Well, thank you very much, Tim, for that very kind introduction, and congratulations to you, to Fran O'Sullivan, and to Michael Barnett for this amazing event that has been put on today, which I certainly have found extremely interesting and informative. Kia ora koutou katoa, tēnei te me nui kia koutou. It's really good, as I said, to be with you. In the last few sessions, we've been shooting for the stars, haven't we? But we're going to continue to shoot for the stars, but perhaps a little closer to earth by focusing on agribusiness, but in a way that is no less science-driven and marked by innovation and big picture thinking. We're going to focus on some exciting new business ventures that are coming forward in the dynamic and fast-moving US market. And I'm delighted to be joined this afternoon by three expert practitioners in the field. With me on the stage, Kerensa Johnston, the CEO of Wakatū, kia ora. And both coming in from Singapore, Dan Mathieson, the CEO of Zespri International, and Komal Mistry-Mehta, Director of Active Living with Fonterra. Now, I'm going to introduce them all more fully to you shortly, but first I wanted to give some context for our discussion. Now, many New Zealand agribusinesses are today expanding their footprints in the US market through strategic partnerships, through direct investment, and the development of high quality and highly innovative niche products. A friend of mine, John Ballingall, whom I saw here earlier today, has written an extremely interesting report on the NZ-US trade relationship, Stability and Diversity in a Time of Change. And John says that New Zealand's largest export products to the United States are a mix of more traditional pastoral-based exports and newer, innovative, nutritional and functional food products, including, and you'll hear about this, some we may not really have ever heard of back home. We've been told earlier today that we're seeing a marked shift from volume to value, or as the Trade Minister said, from volume to values. That's an important advance in New Zealand's trade profile. So we have with us today three panellists who will share their strategies for successfully penetrating the highly competitive US consumer market. I'm going to ask each of them in turn to just share some opening thoughts. Then we'll have some kōrero amongst the three of them. And as time allows, we will seek your questions from the floor. And I'm going to introduce them before they speak. And then I'm going to ask them one short question on their presentation. First up, we're going to hear from Dan Mathieson from Zespri, who, as I said, is coming in by Zoom from Singapore. And I see he's there on the screen. So welcome, Dan. Dan Mathieson has been Zespri Chief Executive since 2017. In his previous role, he led Zespri's sales and marketing operations and offshore markets, and he delivered a demand-led strategy, growing mature markets and diversifying into new ones, and developing the sales and marketing functions with an increased focus on consumer insight, distributor and retailer relationships, and marketing excellence. And we can see that he walks the talk because he's moved closer to his consumers in Asia. So Dan, now you have the floor, or rather you have the screen. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Stephen, and good afternoon, everyone. Great to be here with you. I hope you've got a lot out of the summit so far. I brought with me the Kiwi brothers. I heard it was safe to do that because the Prime Minister has left the room. And they're also very excited because I heard we got an invitation to join the inaugural trip to New York City from Air New Zealand. And you can see also that their hands are up because they're also very keen to jump on Whisk as soon as that's ready for the first flight. Look, the US is an increasingly important market for Zespri. We have more and more consumers interested in what we grow and how we grow it, and more importantly in the positive impact that little old Aotearoa New Zealand can have around the world, and certainly in the US market. At Zespri, we are striving to deliver on our purpose every day, and that is to help people, communities and the environment around the world thrive through the goodness of kiwifruit, which means that everyone has to benefit as we continue to grow. To achieve our growth ahead of us, we have focused on 6 strategic pillars. 3 of them are at our core. We do them today and we want to strengthen them and enhance them. And that's about retaining and attracting the best people possible to Zespri, and in creating empowering environments where they can bring their best as often as they can. We're also continuing our investment in the brand. We've spent over $1.5 billion in the last 2 decades, and we'll be continuing that investment into the future. And we're also looking to try to get our piece of kiwi fruit on the shelf 12 months of the year. Today, we're not there yet. We're only sort of about 9 to 10, 11 months on that journey in some of our markets, and we need to do more and more of that. And I want to touch on that shortly in relation to the US. We're also focused, though, when we look to the future, to 2030, 2040, 2050, on 3 other strategic pillars, and that's about being led sustainably, a future-led sustainability strategy, which focuses on making our fruit, all of our fruit, carbon positive, climate positive, ridding our supply chain from waste, making all of our packaging environmentally friendly, and supporting our people across all of our ecosystem. We're also focused on innovation, more sun gold varieties. We've just launched Ruby Red, and we're investing more in innovation across our whole business. And finally, investing heavily also in the digital platform. We want to change our ecosystem into one that's digital, that takes information, data, turns that into insights, so that we can make better decisions in the year ahead. In the US market, we have a huge opportunity to continue to go forward. We have good market access, we have 0 tariffs, we have a very large and growing high-income consumer market that have a strong desire for sustainable, healthy products, which are going to support people's well-being and the well-being of the planet. We're already out of Zespri's markets, the US is number 9, and we've given it launch market status, which means basically we're investing heavily in that market, opening offices, putting people on the ground, and hyper investing in sales and marketing. And we have an ambition to bring the US market to our number 4 behind Europe, Greater China, and Asia Pacific regions over the next 5 years. We've been going really well. Over the last 5 years, we've grown that market 121%. Our market share in the US has grown to increased to 36%. And now kiwi fruit is the fastest growing fruit item in the US today, which is something we're really proud of. Our sales were at $150 million US dollars last year. That was up 26% on the year prior. And we're looking to double that over the next 5 years, our exports to the US over the next 5 years, while increasing value. As we look forward, what is going to make us successful in the US is continuing to try to make ourselves relevant and visible to consumers, creating more consumer demand. We're still a really small player in the fruit category, less than 1% of global traded fruit. Part of that, our strategy in the US and in other markets, is to build genuine 12-month supply beyond the shelf for our consumers every day of the year, not just the New Zealand season, which we can supply for 7 or 8 months. And so we're conducting trials in the US at the moment with big players, big fruit producers, kiwi fruit growers, where we're taking our IP to the market and utilizing their strengths of land and access to relationships and labor to allow us to grow our business and our production out of the US market so that we can complement the New Zealand supply. It's hard going in the US, different growing conditions, and so we've got a number of challenges ahead of us. On the other side, also our sales and marketing is a very big part of us being successful in the future, and we're having to be really, really targeted. The US is a big market, but not all consumers want kiwi fruit, and so we've got to find them. And we do a lot of research to find those consumers. And we know we've got a big pool of health-orientated consumers who over-index in fruit purchasing for themselves and their family. And they have a very strong social conscience. They want to they want to buy products that are not only good for them, but are good for communities and good for the planet. Those are the consumers we're trying to reach through really strong consumer research and investment in our brand. This is involving removing barriers to get to them. And so we're implementing strong digital campaigns as well as innovative product sampling and disruptive shopper programs to drive in-store purchase. To accelerate this growth in the future, we're going to really look at where those consumers reside, where they shop, which regions they live in, and then work closely with regional retail customers and strong national customers that make sense to develop win-win relationships with. We're looking to maximize our growth potential and meet demand in each of these channels through our price positioning and pack offerings. A lot of that is centered very strongly around sustainability and reinforcing that through our purpose-led brand communications. We think if we can do all that well, there's a real opportunity for win-win outcomes in the US, for US consumers and for our growers, and of course for all the small businesses and communities that support our Zespri ecosystem in New Zealand and the US. They're just a key few points. Look forward to coming back in Q&A, and I'll hand it back to you, Stephen.
Kia ora, Dan. Thanks very much for that very interesting overview of Zespri in the US. But just while we have you there just for a moment, you've talked a lot about being a purpose-led brand in the US. Why is that more important, or is it more important in the US than elsewhere?
Look, I think it's important everywhere, Stephen. What we're seeing through our research, and this strengthens every time we go out, is that consumers around the world are wanting more from what they buy. It's no longer good enough just to be the best quality kiwi fruit in the world. We actually have to demonstrate to our consumers that we're actually making a difference in the world to social challenges and environmental challenges. In the US, the research is even stronger than other markets, and that's why we will double down the communications there to make sure they understand the full story of what Zespri represents and the progress that we're making for a bigger force for good in the world.
Great. Well, thank you for that. Don't go away. We'll come back to you in just a moment. But next up, ladies and gentlemen, is Komal Mistry-Mehta from Active Living with Fonterra, who's also coming in by feed from Singapore. Komal leads Fonterra's global business unit, Active Living, leading Fonterra's global health, nutrition, and medical businesses focused on advanced adult nutrition, which is core to Fonterra's strategy. Her role spans across the Americas, China, North Asia, Asia Pacific, European markets. My goodness, Komal, that's the whole world. Anybody who wants to apply to come under Komal's purview, please let her know. And that strategy unlocks growth through developing and commercializing science-backed health and wellness solutions. Komal, it's great to have you with us. Share some thoughts with us now.
Thank you so much, Stephen, for the kind introduction. And it's fantastic to be here at such a wonderful summit. And actually a really exciting time for agribusiness and New Zealand exporters, because the US, based on my personal experience leading that market, is dynamic, it's innovative, and presents several opportunities for us as New Zealand-based businesses. So today I'll touch on Fonterra's strategic direction, long-term strategic direction, our lens and some of our learnings in the US market, and also the role, and we've heard that from a number of speakers, that strategic partnerships play in our business, which is a really important part of our strategy. So firstly, just painting the scene in terms of we're all consumers, and we all know as the world evolves, our own approach to health and therefore nutrition is constantly evolving. And what we're living in is in a world where food, data, and technology is all intersecting. And that's a really exciting time. And we can kind of see scientists getting deeper and deeper into understanding human health. And that means that they're looking to more tailor and personalize solutions to better improve health outcomes. So from my perspective, a really exciting time. And you look at that whole market globally, it's a $500 billion market, the health and wellness market. And the US is actually the biggest market globally within that. And I personally really enjoy working with the US because it's at the forefront a lot of the times in terms of food technology. It's dynamic, but more importantly, and I think Dan touched on this as well, is consumer awareness around health and nutrition is really high. And so that means with consumer awareness high, our ability to be innovative and test solutions and understand consumer drivers, it becomes a really important market. So just a few facts: 95% of US consumers actually believe that their physical health is connected to other elements of health. And we may think that's basic, but the number is significantly higher than a lot of other regions. In 2021, we did a consumer health, a very deep consumer health study into the American market. And that showed that when you actually look at American consumers, their top 3 health concerns are, number 1 is cognitive health, so mental health. Number 2 is sleep quality, and we can all relate to that. And number 3 is actually immunity, which is not surprising given the recent pandemic. But it was actually in 2019, for the first time ever, physical elements of health, so things like weight management, didn't feature on the top 3 health concerns for Americans. So that's quite a significant shift and has impacted the way we view nutrition at Fonterra and the areas that we focus on as well. So Fonterra, over the years, we have been known, I guess, for our proteins and our expertise when it comes to physical aspects of health. But over the years, we've gone beyond the traditional and also invested in solutions around mental health, around immunity, around digestion, and even getting into much more advanced areas like disease states. So things like sarcopenia, which is the deterioration of your muscle health as you get older, or even areas like oncology nutrition, where nutrition that you consume when you're going through treatment actually leads to better health outcomes. So as part of Fonterra's long-term aspirations, this whole nutrition and health side, which is really backed by innovation and science and continuing to differentiate our value propositions, coupled with the importance of sustainability, and Dan touched on that as well. That's a really core part of our strategy, to have low carbon dairy, grass-fed, sustainable nutrition for our consumers and customers. This is a really important part of our strategy. And just to bring it to life around what we're doing today with US-based customers and in the US market, if we take an area like medical nutrition, when you look at medical nutrition, the nutrition that patients need is the highest amount of protein in the smallest amount of liquid, the highest amount of calories and vitamins to be able to absorb into your bloodstream really quickly. I mean, that's really what patients need. And we work with a lot of medical nutrition customers, which is a key market globally for medical nutrition, to be able to create proteins that can achieve that, which sounds easy to say, but technically really difficult. And so that goes into things like in hospitals where you're tube feeding, right through to oral nutritional supplements that medical advisors prescribe to their patients. I guess a second example, it's a bit more focused on the wellness side, is a few years back, we tracked the trend around mental wellness, and especially consumers being more and more concerned around things like stress and anxiety. And we actually did our own studies around our milk phospholipids, which I know is a mouthful, but it's essentially a component of milk derived out of milk fat. And we launched a stress and anxiety solution to the market in 2020. So essentially how it shows up to consumers is it can be a stress relief beverage, it can be in a stress relief supplement form, and also some of the concepts that our customers love is a stress release protein nutrition bar as well. So lots of different innovations already underway, and it's an area in terms of nutrition and science that we want to continue to keep innovating in, US being a really important market for us. The other aspect I wanted to quickly touch on is, and it's been mentioned many times today, is the importance of partnerships, in particular in a large dynamic market like the US. It's key to market acceleration, it's key to our strategy, and if we believe through partnering we can create a better nutritional outcome for consumers, which is the heart of our purpose, we will always choose to partner. And a couple of examples that I wanted to share. The first one is a partnership we have with Wakatū, which is a company based in Boston, and it is focused on precision nutrition technology. So to put that into plain English, that's really around getting the right nutrients into the right parts of the body, into the right time, and doing it in a way that potentially could be tailored based on your own individual needs. So we're partnering with Wakatū based in Boston, who have the competency around this particular technology. And what Fonterra brings is our expertise around products such as probiotics. So that's the first thing we're going to be working with them on, and looking at getting a time-released probiotic into the market using their technology. And a bit of background just quickly on probiotics and why Fonterra. So over the years, because we've made cheese and yogurt, we've essentially got one of the largest libraries around the world of cultured probiotic strains, over 40,000 strains, which is pretty impressive. And 2 of our probiotic strains that are currently on the market are in the global top 5 with over 60 clinical studies behind them. So in particular in immunity and digestive health. So a really growing market, the US being the biggest in terms of probiotics. We're really excited about the partnership with Wakatū. The second partnership is one, and you've heard a lot about personalized nutrition, but a partnership we have with Sun Genomics in California. They're a consumer brand that is definitely bringing this to life. So they essentially collect samples of consumers' gut microbiota, and then they test that, and then they provide a personalized supplement, essentially, to consumers. And they hold all of this information in a proprietary consumer database. So we work with Sun Genomics to have a deeper understanding of our own probiotic strains, but also a deeper understanding through their consumer database around what are the trends, what are consumer health, what are the health concerns that consumers have, and how do we get a better understanding of that. And then the third partnership is a little bit closer to home in terms of it's a joint venture with Columbia River Technologies, and that's in the protein space. So that's where the JV, or the joint venture, produces high quality whey proteins for the US market. The joint venture is with local US players, so we're able to source the product locally. And then what Fonterra applies is our intellectual property to get into some of those advanced medical formulations that I just spoke about earlier. So a great example of 3 players bringing our expertise and essentially creating more value to the US consumer. So I guess partnerships are a really key part of our strategy. US a very important part of our long-term direction as Fonterra. It's an exciting and dynamic market. And I know I speak for many at Fonterra when we would say that, you know, we continue to look forward to partner, collaborate, and ultimately create better health solutions for the American consumer. Thank you. I'll hand it back to you, Stephen.
Well, thank you very much, Komal. I mean, just listening to you, I feel so much better. I dare say we all will after we've had greater access to some of these innovative new products. But look, you talked about partnerships in the United States, and I just wanted very quickly to ask whether there's a different quality to partnerships that we're able to build with the United States, you know, bearing in mind that we share so many values that are common. What's your view?
Yeah, and I think there's a variety of partnerships that we can do with the US, and we've heard others in aerospace and in different industries. And I think partnerships should also always be about mutual value and finding that mutual ground. And ultimately, if we can provide, again, like I said, a better solution to the US consumer from a health and nutrition perspective, that should always be the goal. So looking at the types of partnerships, it would be, you know, where we can utilize our IP, and I know Zespri is doing something similar, where we can utilize our IP to create a better health solution. It's always looking at complementary benefits as well. So we look across and go, you know, what is the innovation happening in the US that would complement the solution that we might have and together create a more superior solution, essentially. So that's really our approach to partnerships. It's around complementary skills, it's around mutual benefit, and it's ultimately back to our purpose, which is providing a superior nutritional experience, essentially. And that can come out in a variety of different ways.
Well, thank you. Just stay with us and we'll get to some further discussion in just a moment. But ladies and gentlemen, now I'm pleased to call on Kerensa Johnston, Chief Executive of Wakatū. Tēnā koe te rangatira, nau mai hara mai ki tō tātou hui. Kerensa is the Chief Executive of Wakatū Incorporation, a hapu-owned organisation based in Nelson, which owns Kono, an export food and beverage business, O Ora, focused on science and nutrition, and Whenua, its land and property business. Kerensa has a legal and commercial background, has worked as a solicitor in the private sector, as a barrister, and as a legal academic at the University of Auckland. Her iwi are Ngāti Tama, Ngā Ruahine, and Ngāti Whakaya. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Stephen, and tēnā tātou katoa, tēnei te mihi mai oha kia koutou i tēnei rā. Te mana o te whenua nei, tēnā koutou, mai te uri o Taranaki me Tainui. And kia ora, Stephen, thank you for the welcome. And I thought I would just by way really of giving a little bit of context before I talk about our strategy and approach in the US market, just explain a little bit about who we are, who Wakatū is. We're probably quite a traditional organisation in many respects. We're about nearly 45 years old, based in the top of the South Island. We started in 1977 really with land and water and not much else. And we embarked on a strategy of asking ourselves, how can we add the most value to that asset base for the benefit of our owners? And our owners are about just over 4,000 Māori families spread around the world. So a very active ownership base and always quick to either provide feedback or when we're in market, being real ambassadors for our products. So we come from Te Tauihu, the top of the south. Our early board, looked around at what was happening, what others were doing in our region, and of course, at that time, probably the most exciting industry to become a part of was wine. And so we started with growing and producing wine in not only in Marlborough, but we started in Marlborough and then went south and further north. And we've been in the US market with Kono, primarily Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc, for over 25 years, or just about 25 years. We also produce kaimoana, so seafood, at one stage oysters, but no longer in the US market. And we have a partnership, obviously, with Zespri. We grow kiwifruit, hops, apples, and they go around the world. As well as that, we have Annie's, our fruit bar business, and that's predominantly in the US market. So all of that really explains what we do. It's underpinned by what we call our 500-year intergenerational strategy, and we call that Te Pai Tāwhiti. And you might be wondering why am I referring to that? And I'm referring to that because it really speaks to how we approach our relationships in the US market. So we take a very long-term view. That's an intergenerational strategy that we have to try and work out how to give relevance to that every day. And it really speaks to how we try and do business, not only in the US, obviously, but across all the markets that we are in. I thought I would just touch on a couple of things that have themes that have emerged, particularly in the morning session, because I think they're relevant, to this panel in particular. We've heard quite a few people talking about purpose, And certainly as far as we're concerned, and Kono in particular, being very clear on our purpose as a company, as an exporter, has really served us well in terms of determining, who we should be working with, who's aligned with us in terms of values. And one of the earlier speakers, talked about the concept of the market versus segments of the market. For us, I think it's really simple. It's actually just about people. Companies are just collections of people, and there are good companies and there are bad ones. And for us, we've worked really hard to try and find, like-minded people who want to work with us and share our values. And that wasn't, hasn't been easy. We made lots of mistakes at the beginning. But I'm really pleased to say that the partners we have now in the United States, very similar to us. They are sustainable, intergenerational family businesses for the most part, who are really committed to us, and we're committed to them. The Minister this morning talked about one of our core values, I think, that we all share as New Zealanders, particularly in the food and beverage sector, and that's kaitiakitanga. And I think he defined it as care for the land, care for people. We're really cautious about how we use that word within Kono, and in particular, probably for the last, I think, at least 4 years, we've been engaged internally in a conversation about what that means for us as a New Zealand company, and in particular a Māori company. And we've been very cautious about how we use that term with our consumers and in market, because we believe that has to be really informed by data, by evidence, to demonstrate how that has actually been brought to life, whether that's on Orchard or in our offices or wherever it is. We're incredibly protective of our reputation as New Zealanders, and in particular as Māori, and so we have quite a few conversations, worrying conversations at times, about using words like regenerative, kaitiakitanga. Organic is less problematic because we have all sorts of systems that can actually validate those claims, but our reputation is probably one that our single most important attribute as New Zealand companies. So protecting that, as far as Kono is concerned, is hugely important. The other thing we've been talking or hearing a bit about this morning too, of course, is the trade relationships and the ability of states to make those relationships easier or more difficult. And absolutely, we want to work and support not only our government but other states in terms of making, we're helping to make our relationships more efficient, for example. But a flip side of that ethic of kaitiakitanga is rangatiratanga. So the ability that we all have as New Zealanders to control, oversee and manage our resources, and in particular our IP, our intellectual property. So I would just say, I know there are officials in the room who are working hard on this dilemma at the moment, but our domestic frameworks and legal protection in that respect are poor, which can undermine the value of the international agreements that we enter into. For companies that, like us and others in the room, who are investing in brand, investing in intellectual property here, we need really strong frameworks to protect that investment, which we currently don't have. So just a reflection really, Stephen, based on what we've been talking about this morning.
Kia ora, Kerensa. Kia ora, mō tō whakaaro. I wanted to ask you though, just right up, I mean your company and your people take a very long-term view, 500 years. That's quite a while, isn't it? But there we are. I just wonder, in the United States, does that give you the ability to make particular connections that are valuable to you? How do our American friends react to that sort of long-term perspective?
I think partly why we've been successful in terms of building really sustainable relationships with our US distributors and customers is we've worked really hard and spent quite a lot of time and money on bringing them here, bringing them into our homes, and it's something I think we're all really good at as New Zealanders. We host in a way that's quite different from most corporate people in places around the world. So an example of that is, just before we went into just before 2020, we brought 50 salespeople from the States, from the West Coast, over to the top of the South, and we spent a week with them. And in the scale of things, we were a small company, but we made the investment to bring 50 people across from the States, wine salespeople, because we knew if we could get them here, and we had our winemaker hosting them with a barbecue at his house. We took them to our special places across the top of the South. Getting them here, at their heart, being able to take them onto our beautiful whenua, and then that is something that can't be taught. So making those investments in people, I think, is really important.
Kia ora, kia ora. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to bring us back now to Dan and Komal, and I want to ask all three, actually. We've talked about the rapidly changing US market, but where do you get the information that you need to understand what consumers want? Dan, we might go to you first, since you've been sitting there patiently.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. Look, there's a lot of sources to get that information. We use a whole lot of internationally recognised companies around the world in the market research space, like Nielsen. Everyone's heard of them, Kantar. So we use them at the top level to really help us drill down into the types of consumers that are sitting there across the US, and where we can actually find those consumers and how we can target them through our retail relationships or through our digital platforms. So we use, at that higher level, some pretty strong partnerships there. I think then also it's about the next level down is obviously about hiring really good people, and we've just heard a great story about just that. So having a really strong local team on the ground who are working with our customers, who are very close to the interface of that market research, sitting in the panel discussions with real consumers, visiting the houses of real consumers, having conversations with them about what they want in the health and nutrition space, what they would like in fruit, what they would like to see from kiwi fruit. That's all part of the journey that we go on. So we're tapping into a whole lot of different sources, some from big organizations, some from our partnerships at distributor retailer level, and of course, utilising the strengths of the talent of our local team.
Great. Komal, what about you? I mean, you're dealing with very specialised niches.
Yeah, and just to add to what, I won't repeat what Dan's saying in terms of some of the sources we use as well, but just to add to that, we've over the years had to build up our data analytics capability, and so within our teams at Fonterra, we actually, and we all know the power of social media and the comments that are made online and how e-commerce are growing. So our data analytics specialists in Fonterra actually canvass and scrape that data essentially to then understand what the consumer sentiment is. And that's actually how we picked up on the stress and anxiety and mental health trend about 4 years ago, before it became a #1 health concern in the US. So that's really important. And look, we're still building on that capability. It's still a really important part of our future direction, but an important way we get vibes from the market. And then secondly, what's really important for us is to be within the ecosystem. And what I mean by that is most of our solutions now are quite health benefit led. So being part of the medical nutrition community, being part of the digestion or the mental health community beyond nutrition. So being part of that ecosystem, but having the people, as Dan mentioned as well, the types of people we have on the ground, their backgrounds are in biotech, their backgrounds are in nutrition, their backgrounds are in microbiology. And so they speak the same language as our ecosystem partners and also as our customers. So those are just some additions. But yeah, it's an important part of our business.
Thank you. Kerensa, you're also working in multiple segments. Where do you get the information about consumers that you need?
Well, it's a combination really of the research, but also I think you can't replicate being in market. We've got people up in market actually as we speak. Our first team to go up, since the pandemic, and doing exactly that, as Dan referred to. So following people around supermarkets, going into homes, looking in fridges, and we can make all sorts of decisions here about formats and product preferences and so on. But you can't replicate sitting down with the consumer that you're targeting and having those direct conversations. So that's probably the most valuable way for us that we would get those insights.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I have a confession to make to you, and that is that I had intended to open up the floor for discussion, and indeed we've got some good questions coming through, but I've also got a very red-looking light staring me in the face here, saying we need to bring the session to a close. So I apologise to those of you who wanted to ask questions. I do think we've had a very rich exchange, though, today amongst our three panellists, where a number of key points have come forward. Certainly the need to develop strong partnerships, which is a key feature of the US relationship. The importance of being science-driven, science-led, and developing new ideas for the future. The importance of long-term strategies that can be deployed to good effect with the right people on the ground. It's not an easy task by any means. And I think the three groups we've had with, or the three individuals, outstanding individuals, may I say, that we've had with us today represent quite a wide range of different approaches to what is obviously a key market. So I'd like on your behalf now to thank Dan, Komal and Kerensa for their insights. Hiatu kia koutou. Do keep up the amazing work you're doing in the US market. Can you join me in thanking our speakers?